today we are talking about brain health and socialization, which is very appropriate for this time of our lives, right? Living in a pandemic where we are having, our socialization has changed quite a bit, right? And quite honestly, we don't know when that's going to go back to the way it was. There's the social distancing, there's the mask, there's, for those of us in dementia care, those are those that living in a community that are still being physically separated from their loved ones, right? Not being able to see their loved ones or touch their loved ones, at least not without a window or partition being between them. And that will hinder some of this socialization that is important to our brain health, but our overall health as well. We have talked about the influencers of our brain health. We've talked about diet, exercise, stress. Last week we talked about sleep. Today we'll talk about social connections, and again next week we're going to talk about cognitive fitness. And these 6 areas are the areas that have been shown and proven over and over again that can be influencers of brain health, positive and negative, depending on how our lifestyle choices, right? So humans are born into social groups and live their entire lives as part of a society. So the societal or social element can't easily be removed from the evolution of an individual. And this came from the Medical New Today journal. It's really, human beings are social creatures. That's part of who we are. And a lot of studies are showing over and over again the positive benefits of socialization on our memory, our judgment, our cognition, but also overall health. A lot of studies are done. The more social connections that a person has, the better they do on memory tests and language tests and executive functioning tests than those that aren't as socially connected. And then also just overall health as well. There was one study that was done revealed that seniors who live a socially active life, but they prioritize social goals. So they make it a point to stay social and stay connected with others. They have a higher late life satisfaction. So not only are they getting the benefits that we're going to continue to talk about, but they just have an overall satisfaction of life, which I think we all really want as we grow older, right? Physically,
Jamie, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I am, this is Carolyn Henry. I am only seeing a screenshot of information about registering for workshops. Is that what's supposed to be on the screen?
No. Thank you so much for stopping me.
Well, I don't know. Well, maybe I should just,
no,
I see somebody else. Okay.
No, thank you so much for stopping me. I can, because I saw the PowerPoint, but apparently y'all didn't. So let me redo this and see if this works. Thanks, Carolyn. Can y'all see the PowerPoint now?
Yes. Yeah. It's not a great shot of this PowerPoint. It's not the tip, but there
you go.
There, okay.
Is that better? Okay.
Right.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. So y'all haven't missed too much of the slides. Talking about how we are social creatures, human beings are social creatures, and that many studies are showing the benefits of staying social, just on our overall health, including our brain health, right? Physically, social activity is associated with a stronger immune system. So most people that have more social connections can ward off the flu and the cold, even some types of cancer, better than those that don't have as many social connections. Emotionally, the research is continuing to confirm that the more social connections we have, it improves our mood, right? And having friends and staying socially connected keeps us mentally active. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how that works. But it also helps us ward off stress and feelings of depression and anxiety. You have those trusted people that you can talk to and talk things out, figure things out with, and possibly even relieve stress with. So the psychologist Susan Pinker stated that a direct person-to-person contact, or including physical contact, so a handshake, a hug, the high five, right? Contact, it triggers parts of our nervous system that release a cocktail of neurotransmitters tasked with regulating our response to stress and anxiety. So essentially, when we have person-to-person, face-to-face physical contact, what happens is it releases oxytocin into our system, and this is the care and connect nurturing hormone that we have. It also helps increase our levels of trust in the individual. It also helps release or generate dopamine into our system, which is that feel-good hormone, and it's a natural pain reliever as well. And it decreases or lowers those cortisol levels, which is essentially the stress hormone. So when we have that connection, face-to-face, but also just a nice physical connection, those three things happen. And a corroborating study from the National Human Genome Research Institute showed that those undergoing chemotherapy for cancer tend to fare better if they have a social support or social network and interaction. And this suggests that just by being around family and friends or peers, going through a similar experience can strengthen us both mentally and physically. Another study I didn't put on here through Medical News Today also showed that the connection between romantic partners also helped with managing pain. So there's a lot of corroborating studies on just the benefits of brain health, but also overall health through social connections. The NIH, or National Institute of Health, determined that just 10 minutes of a daily social interaction increases the performance of our cognition, or the assessments that have done, and it has an important cognitive edge as we age, or gives us a cognitive edge as we age. You know, what happens when we are having a social interaction or being social with somebody, we're having to use most parts of our brain to do that. So it's very stimulating for our brain. We're exposed to new things, new ideas, there's new opportunities, new perspectives. We also have the advantage of talking to others and helping put stuff into perspective and help us de-stress, right? Multiple neuronal networks that support daily function. We have to think, we have to respond quickly, we have to detect, decode, and interpret the interaction. You know, they can make socialization and make it sound pretty clinical, some of these things. We have to be able to give an appropriate response. We have to listen, we have to take in the information, we have to take it into the context that it's intended, right? We have to assign meaning to the information, analyze the information in the broader conversation. We're having to interpret nonverbal cues, facial expressions, inflections, tone of voice. And we're also having to really work on that working memory to effectively navigate conversations. So I have to really work that working memory, or use that working memory to stay up to date with the conversation and stay engaged in the conversation. And maybe you're having multiple conversations, and being able to use that working memory to be able to stay or navigate all of those conversations. We also have to use our impulse and inhibitions, those controlled center, to have appropriate interactions with people as well. So we are using most parts of our brain when we have a social interaction. And that's why they think that this is one of the best ways for brain health, because it does work most of your brain. And this just a repeat of that, but it engages several areas of your brain. You're having to think on your feet, you're having to use your memory, you're having to use that frontal lobe for social cues and expressions, to hear things. You have to use temporal lobes to hear, to speak, etc. Lowers the stress levels, and tend to have better physical health. And this is, you know, our friends, or good friends at least, encourage us to eat better. You can encourage us to exercise. You have a buddy that you go walk with, right? They encourage you to go see a doctor when you're not feeling sick, or they can talk you through some of those emotional things that you have that I mentioned. But you also have that support network to help you, that can take care of you when you are sick, whether you're physically sick or maybe you're emotionally feeling down or mentally down. You have that support there that you can call on too. And that helps us with our physical health. People with more social support tend to live longer and have higher cognitive performance than those that are more isolated. And this study showed that even that was true after they accounted for overall physical health or level of health. So they made sure to take out any possible things that could deter this study. So those that were not as isolated as others did live longer and they had higher cognition. There was another study done in the Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry that studied loneliness and cognitive function. And they followed for about 12 years people 65 and older. And the ones that reported feelings of loneliness had faster cognitive decline. In this study, I've always found this fascinating, but that loneliness has been shown that it is just as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes per day, being obese, or never exercising. And I've seen that a couple of times, that research there. And I put this on here because we are living in a time where people are more isolated and the feelings of loneliness are there. So how can we combat that, the isolation and the loneliness, and have these social connections so we can fare better with our brain health, but our overall health, right? So people who are socially engaged and exercising cognitive skills such as memory and language, which help them to develop cognitive reserve. While this may not stop their brains from changing, cognitive reserve can help people cope better with the effects of age and delay in symptoms of dementia. So this author or psychiatrist, Bill Livingston, said this in a statement. She also said spending more time with friends could be good for mental well-being, and they correlate with being physically active, both of which are reducing your risk for developing dementia. So they are saying that while staying social may not change your brain, it can help build that cognitive reserve, which we mentioned a few times in this series. You want to have as much reserve as you possibly can, and can delay any possible symptoms of impaired cognition. And I want to say, just kind of mention this real quick before we get into how do you stay more social, how do you work on this, is being the social and the spiritual well-being. Because I think the spiritual well-being is important, and there's a big social aspect to that. When you're a part of a spiritual community, whatever that may look like, it's different for each person. There is stress reduction there because there's a lot of social interaction generally when you're part of a spiritual community or religious community or church community, whatever that looks like for you. There's the stress reduction because of the social interaction and the social support. There's also, most of them practice some form of meditation or prayers or reciting affirmations, things like that, which we've talked about in the brain health and stress, can help with brain health. And also changing your perspective, that positive outlook. This being able to talk about the situation, how can I look at it from a different viewpoint, and focusing on the positive things. The intellectual engagement, whether it might be you were learning about the history of, it's the history of the Bible, right? So you're learning new things, as well as just that social interaction you're having to do. But then you also have that support, that sense of community and belonging, which is huge for the social brain health, but stress management as well. And again, that it also helps us encourages us to practice other positive lifestyle choices, like eating well and exercising, asking for help when we need it, things like that. So I think this is an important thing to point out, being a part of a spiritual community. So right now, the pros and cons of being social in a virtual world, because our worlds have turned more virtual over the past 6 months. Most of the things that we are doing are online, as we are now, and where we can be very thankful and blessed because we do have the technology to be able to do that. I want to talk about some pros and cons for this. The digital world or the virtual world is great for reconnecting with old friends. You can look at people you went to elementary school with and generally find them, right? It helps us stay in touch more frequently and easier, quite frankly, with the existing social network you already have. You can use texting, you can use email, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's a whole bunch of ones that I don't even know about or know how to use, but they're out there. And you can also find groups of people that share common interests with you, or like-minded people on different apps and different sites. But it also exposes you to new ideas. And it's also you're learning new learning challenges, just having to learn a new platform, right? That's engaging your brain, or having to research something, use this new app, that's something new as well. You can use Skype, Zoom, like we're using FaceTime, so you can connect live, face-to-face with somebody when you can't be in person. And that's a huge benefit as well. And there's a lot of research that suggests that positive online interactions target the brain's reward centers. So this is, we're having a positive interaction through Zoom, or you get a like on Facebook, or a comment, on a picture you posted, and that will trigger that reward system within the brain. So that is a positive. A few cons, though. Some research indicates that the more time people spend on their social media sites, like a Facebook or a Twitter or something like that, the more unsatisfied they become with their own lives. And so they're saying this might be because some people turn to social media to counteract feelings of sadness or social isolation. And then they can very easily become envious of the lives of their friends, or what their friends are showing about their lives and their accomplishments. And it is, I can identify with that, I guess. I've done that myself. But also knowing that what people show on the virtual world or social media may not be what's really going on. And I also know for myself, and I think this is true for a lot of people, are we starting to turn to social media as a coping mechanism, but not a great coping mechanism, right? Because is this distracting me from something that I need to really focus on, or what is it, right? So another comment. There are advantages to connecting in a virtual world, but the research suggests that in order to stay more cognitively fit, we must make time for in-person interactions. And so the quality of an interaction online is very different than an in-person interaction or a face-to-face interaction. You don't have the quick comparison of those nonverbal cues, the rich experience of a face-to-face contact, or even just the ability to touch somebody. Right now, if you're even comfortable doing that. You can't cover as much territory in a series of messages like emails or text, or even a Zoom conversation as you can in a real conversation or a face-to-face conversation. And you also don't reap the rewards of human contact, a light touch, a smile. And you're only seeing a version of that person's world at that moment, right? I think just right now, y'all are seeing the version of Zoom right now in the world that I'm in, but there's all this stuff going on around you that you don't see. And I can very easily interact with my world around me, and you don't see that, and that can sully, essentially, the interaction that you're having online. But you can do many things if you are using Zoom or FaceTime, many things to counteract the distractions and have a well-meaning and a nice connection with somebody through Zoom or FaceTime or something like that. So ways to become more social, especially in a digital world, and there are some things in here that are meant to be in person, but there's also virtual opportunities through these as well. But just strike up a conversation with a neighbor or somebody in line with you at the grocery store. It's a nice way and a safe way to have a social interaction. Walk through your neighborhood and make a point of stopping and saying hello to somebody or everybody that you see. Right? Babysit your grandkids or your neighbor's kids, help them with homework. Right now with school starting back, there's a lot of families having a really hard time managing this new school online or in person and what's happening. And they can use some extra support there. Joining a club, a class, or a group, to find a group that has similar interests as you. And there are some groups that are meeting in person in a safe manner, and there are some groups that are meeting virtually. Right? Recreation centers or gyms, you can do this in person. You can also do classes online. exercise classes, library programs, book clubs. There's some in person, there's some online. Joining a support group, right? Our support group meets tomorrow at 11 if you want to join that one. Intergenerational programs are great for a cognitive boost as well, and that's for both parties. So if you're meeting, let's say you want to volunteer and tutor a kid one-on-one online, right, that's having a hard time with their reading. It helps you because you're with the intergenerational, but it also helps them as well. Not just with the tutoring, but the social connections with that intergenerational connection. There's a lot of studies behind that and how it helps boost cognition and overall life satisfaction. I mentioned volunteering or getting a job. There are a lot of virtual opportunities to volunteer. There's also a lot of places that need volunteers that have safe in-person volunteer opportunities, and food banks is what came to mind for me right there. Have a friend or a family member over for coffee. You can do this in a safe manner. You can do the 6 feet apart. You can wear a mask, you can wear gloves. It can be safe, but you're still having a social connection. Attend a religious service, whether in person or virtually. Calling a friend, even just the old phone, calling a friend too, the social connection. And then taking part in an activity you've never done before. So this is something new for your brain, learning something new. And there are a lot of classes that you can do online, in person. You know, I know, for instance, art, there's the Painting with a Twist company that you can go in person and do painting. They show you how to paint. You don't have to know how to paint. They can show you how to do the picture. But you can also do some stuff online as well. They'll send you the supplies and you can do it, and you're a part of a class, but also doing something that's not new and novel for your brain, which is challenging you as well. So I want to kind of turn it back to you all, for any questions that you may have, but what are some other ways that haven't been listed that maybe you're using to stay social, especially right now during the pandemic and what we're going through? Does anybody have anything they're doing other than what we've talked about or what we've mentioned? You have to unmute yourself.
Well, I've been surprised because I have gone to some online classes and events, you know, all the way from concerts to plays. So I'm getting really interesting resources, and I call it a catalog. It was probably close to 10 or 15 pages of free classes, most of them free, that the city of Fort Worth is offering on all kinds of subjects. And so a friend and I tonight are going to, she's a gardener, I'm not, but we're going to this class on shade gardening, because she has a lot of shade in her property. 2-hour seminar, you know, live, you know, online. I mean, I'm just amazed at what's out there. And once you start doing a couple of things, other announcements of that kind of stuff will come to you, you know, and so you get invited to all kinds of things I would have never imagined. So I'm looking forward to that and see what that's like. But the city of Fort Worth itself.
Thank you, Judy. In that, yeah, you just get exposed. And that's, I mean, I guess it's another positive of this is, yeah, once you go to one class, then you get announcements for all these same things, because the digital, you know, formulas that they have to start targeting you now, right? So if you're interested in something, they'll make sure you get that information for it. And I think that's can be a positive for that. And being able to share resources with those that you think will need it too. Found all these things. Well, gosh, my friend's a gardener. She might be interested in this, and being able to share and invite others as well, and keep them engaged. You know, the question here in the chat is how does separation from loved ones during COVID affect brain health? Are there some ways to minimize depression and loneliness, etc.? And I'll let if Polly has something else or different to say. I think right now it's just a lot of being intentional about having to make that connection, right? It is going to be intentional of who can I call and invite, or say, join me on this webinar, or do you want to go walk in the neighborhood with me? and just being intentional to help fight that off, or help minimize the effects of the separation and the loneliness. I think a natural part of what we're living through. Holly, do you have something else to add?
I think that, and then the things that we've said on some other programs about going ahead and just owning, it's okay if you are having some depression right now. This is not a normal time. I would be much more worried about folks that are just yippee skipping right through this and acting like nothing's wrong. Something's wrong. This isn't what we're used to. And so it's okay to have these kind of not normal feelings during a not normal time, and allowing yourself to go ahead and have them. But then doing the kind of things like Judy was talking about, or that Jamie mentioned, and then I think Jamie hit it right on the head with that word intentional. We may have had some kind of depression and loneliness before, but it was nothing like this, where maybe at one point, it always just kind of passes. I continue to do my thing, but now I can't just continue to do my thing. I've got to intentionally reconnect maybe with some folks that I'd lost contact with. I know we've got someone on a support group that just started kind of randomly calling people out of the church directory, and that has turned into reconnecting some friendships and having some phone calls to make. And so I think that being intentional is the biggest thing right now. And when you're depressed and lonely, that's hard to do, is to be intentional about it. So you don't want to get caught in that snowball. So yeah, I think that's it, Jamie, is really being intentional.
I think the amount of energy that it takes, to be intentional, even if it's to make a phone call, just has blown me away. You just have to push through that, because it takes so much more energy.
It does. And I think if you set for yourself goals, and make them small, attainable goals. I've got a list right here. And it's that same kind of thing. That list that I just showed you isn't my work to-do list. It's my other life to-do list. And my goal is to get them done by the end of the week, not to get them all done in one day. And one of those might be, I'm going to send somebody a personal message on Facebook and see if we can kind of start up that conversation, or I'm going to call someone, or I'm going to take a class, or I'm going to do a virtual museum tour, one. And next week I'm going to try for 2. That type thing.
Yeah, thank you. It can be daunting, or take a lot of energy. I like that a lot. But and I was saying to myself, I may not, I'll put forth the energy, and I may not even want to do that right now. Like make a phone call or write a letter. I just don't want to do that because I'm weary, right? But then I say, I'm going to feel so much better when it's done. Like the benefit from doing this is going to outweigh the energy it's going to take. And I'm going to feel so much better mentally and feel emotionally when it's done, after I've done it. Well, I appreciate everybody being on here. It is 11:30. Unless there are any other questions or suggestions or comments. Then we will send you the PowerPoint for the slides for this program, and we'll send the recording as well. As soon as it gets downloaded, we'll send you the recording. And please share these resources with anybody that you know would benefit. Pass along the slides or send the link for the recording. This information is for everybody. We appreciate you all, and I'll also send you a list of our upcoming classes too and how to register for those. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.